Welcome to the deep dive, where we take your curiosity and a stack of, well, fascinating information, and we try to extract the core insights, basically giving you a shortcut to being well-informed pretty quickly.
And today, we're diving into something really intriguing. It's a case from Japan. Makes you think about some big questions, identity, memory.
And maybe, just maybe, what happens after this life. We've got the story of a young boy, Kazuya, and some really remarkable details that suggest he might actually be the reincarnation of his own mother's half-brother.
Yeah, it's quite a claim. And for this deep dive, we have a pretty good set of sources. We're looking at excerpts from a detailed research paper on Kazuya's case.
Okay.
And that paper itself, it draws on quite a bit. There's a documentary film called A Promise with God,
Right.
a book written by Kazuya's grandmother, interviews with Kazuya, his family, and even follow-up interviews with people who knew the person Kazuya might have been before.
So, quite comprehensive then. Our goal today, really, is to explore this pretty extraordinary story finale. We want to look at the unusual things Kazuya said, things he did, the connections to his deceased Uncle June. That's what led his family and others to this belief.
Prepare for some surprising facts, I think.
Yeah.
Moments that really, make you stop and think.
Definitely. Okay, so let's start with June. We need to understand who he was first, right?
Right. So Jin was born back in 1975. He was the second son of a woman named Midori. Interestingly, his parents divorced quite early on.
Oh, okay.
And because of that, he ended up forming a really close bond with his grandparents. They played a big part in raising him, along with Midori.
And he faced some challenges too, didn't he? Health-wise.
Yes. At age 5, he developed epilepsy. And he was actually on medication for that for 15 years.
Wow, long time. But the circumstances around his death, that seems particularly important for Kazuya's story later. He died young, right?
Tragically young. 1997, he was only 21. And the events leading up to it are, well, they're quite significant.
How so?
Well, it seems June had gotten involved with some delinquents, people associated with the Yakuza.
Oh, okay. That sounds serious.
It was. He promised his mother, Midori, that he'd break away from them. And on December 19th, 1997, he apparently went to meet these individuals, maybe to sort things out. He'd reaffirmed his promise to his mother earlier that day. Then Midori got a call from someone who was with June, claiming they could help him leave that group. But then, another call. The attempt had failed.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Midori was understandably very distressed. She told June to come home immediately, and when he did, she strongly criticized him. According to the sources, she was quite harsh.
Understandable, maybe given the fear, but...
But June felt overwhelmed by her reaction, his own guilt. He just left abruptly.
Man.
Later that same night, Midori got the call from the police. June had died by suicide. He jumped from a bridge. The time was estimated around 11:45 p.m.
God, that's awful. And Midori must have felt...
Profound remorse. The sources make that very clear. She believed her words, her anger, had directly pushed him to it.
That guilt must have been immense.
It seems so. And it might be linked to something really unusual that happened just days later. 7 days after June's death, actually.
What happened?
It was late, after 11 p.m. Midori heard this incredibly loud knocking at her front door.
Yeah.
Like really forceful.
Okay.
And her dog apparently reacted with extreme fear, just terrified.
Yeah.
But Midori herself, she had this sudden, very strong feeling. She just knew it was June.
Wow. So what did she do? Did she open the door?
No. And this is the really thought-provoking part. Despite grieving, wanting him back, her instinct, her immediate words were, June, go back. This is not where you belong.
She told him to go back.
Yes. And as soon as she said it, the knocking just stopped. Instantly.
That must have left her feeling even more conflicted.
You'd have to imagine so.
Yeah.
And then about 6 months later, another layer gets added. Dreams.
Dreams about June?
Recurring dreams, yeah. He'd appear, apparently, and tell her to forgive anyone she might blame for his death. And crucially, to stop blaming herself.
What reason did he give?
He said her sadness, her guilt, was sort of holding him back, preventing him from returning to what he called the light.
The light. And did these dreams help her?
Over time, yes. The sources say they did eventually bring her some solace, some measure of peace.
Okay, so that's June's story. Tragic, and with these unusual post-death events. Now let's shift to Kazuya.
All right, Kazuya. He was born in April 2005. His mother is Izumi, who is June's half-sister, so Midori's daughter.
Making Midori Kazuya's grandmother.
Exactly.
Huh?
And Kazuya's birth wasn't straightforward either. He was nearly 2 months premature, and he had health issues right from the start: asthma, atopic reactions, something called cryptorchidism, which needed surgery.
So a difficult start to life.
Definitely. And quite soon after he was born, he and Izumi moved in with Midori, which put them all in the same house where June had lived.
And this is where things start getting...
This is where the first really striking incident happens, yeah. It's December 9th, 2004. Now remember the date June died, December 19th, 1997.
Okay, so almost exactly 7 years later, but 10 days off. Wait, that one says Dick 9th was the date.
Yeah.
Let me double check. Yes, sorry. The original outline mentions Dick 19th for June's death and Dick 9th for the Kazuya incident 7 years later. Let's stick to that. December 9th, 2004.
Right, December 9th. 7 years after June's death, almost to the day and time, Kazuya is just 8 months old. Izumi is holding him, and he starts crying inconsolably.
Okay, babies cry, but...
But then he does something specific. He gestures, points. He wants to be taken upstairs, specifically to June's old room.
At 8 months old, how did they even know that's what he meant?
Izumi apparently interpreted his gestures and his gaze that way, and she was surprised, but she took him up there. The moment they entered June's room, Kazuya stopped crying immediately and started smiling.
Okay, that is weird. 8 months old, pointing to a specific room.
Izumi herself apparently had a very strong feeling right then. She felt June had come back.
I can imagine why. And did these connections continue?
They did. Around age 1, another incident. Kazuya was crying again. Midori showed him a drawing.
What kind of drawing?
It was from a children's book, Suho's White Horse. But the significant thing was, June had drawn this picture, copied it from the book when he was in 2nd grade.
And Kazuya,
Stopped crying instantly. Seemed to just stare at it like he recognized it.
again at only 1 year old. That pushes the boundaries of what we think infants remember, doesn't it?
It certainly raises questions. And then there's the family relationships. Kazuya showed this really strong affection for his great-grandparents, June's parents, the ones who helped raise June.
The ones June was so close to.
Exactly. From a very young age, Kazuya was incredibly attached to them. He'd visit his great-grandfather in the hospital every single day for over a year. Would even wipe his face gently.
And this reminded the family of June.
Deeply. Midori and Izumi saw it as mirroring the very close bond June had shared with them.
Okay, so behavioral echoes. But what about things he said?
This is maybe some of the most compelling evidence for the family. His use of family terms. He started calling people by names June used.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so he called his great-grandfather Oto-san, which means father in Japanese.
But he was his great-grandfather.
Right, and he called his great-grandmother Okasan mother. He called Midori, his actual grandmother, Mama, and his own mother, Izumi, he called Ii-chan.
Wait, so those aren't the normal terms a child would use in that situation?
Not at all. But they were exactly the terms June had used. Remember, June was raised partly by his grandparents.
Right, so he saw them almost as parents.
Precisely. So Ota-san and Okasan were his terms for them. He called his own mother, Midori, Mama. And Ii-chan was June's specific, shortened, affectionate name for his half-sister, Izumi.
And Kazuya just started using these exact terms spontaneously?
Apparently so. And Izumi, his actual mother, she tried to correct him at first.
What did she say?
When Kazuya called Midori Mama, Izumi said something like, "No, that's your grandmother, I'm your mother."
And Kazuya's reaction?
He insisted, "This is Mama," pointing at Midori. Eventually, Izumi just sort of accepted it. The sources even include a table laying out these unusual names Kazuya used and how they perfectly matched June's usage.
That's very specific. It's not just one name, it's the whole set.
Exactly. And it gets even more specific. Remember June's best friend, Yumi?
Yes, the one who visited every year on the anniversary of his death.
Right. When Kazuya was 2, Yumi came to visit. No one had told Kazuya her name or anything about her relationship with June.
Okay.
Kazuya saw her and immediately called her Yumi. But here's the kicker. He pronounced it with the exact same slightly unusual accent that June had always used. Apparently, June put a strong stress on the emi syllable.
He replicated the accent without ever hearing June say it.
That's what the family and Yumi herself reported. Yumi was, as you can imagine, incredibly moved, burst into tears. Midori and Izumi witnessed it too.
How do you even begin to explain that, the specific pronunciation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It seems to go beyond coincidence or guessing. It suggests some kind of, well, carried-over memory trace.
Okay. Any other statements from him around that age?
There was one instance, also around age 2. He was having a bad asthma attack, struggling to breathe.
Right, he had health issues.
And in the middle of this attack, he apparently said, "I can't breathe, but I won't die. I will live this time."
I will live this time, given June's suicide.
Exactly. It could be interpreted as reflecting a past life choice, a past desire to die early, contrasted with the determination to live now.
Powerful words from a 2-year-old. Did anyone ever ask him directly about being June?
Midori did, his grandmother. When Kazuya was 3, she had obviously been thinking about it a lot, seeing all these signs. She finally just asked him straight out, "Were you Jin?"
And what did a 3-year-old say to that?
His answer was pretty remarkable. He said, "When I was born from Mama," and he meant Midori here, using June's term, "I was June, but now I am Kaju." He was trying to say Kazuya, his own name. He finished, "I am Kaju now."
Wow, so acknowledging the past identity, but affirming his current one.
That's how Midori took it. It was incredibly significant for her belief. It suggested this idea of identity carrying over, but also transforming.
Did these echoes of June continue as he got older?
Yes, in various ways, even quite mundane things sometimes. Like when Kazuya was 5, Midori noticed him organizing his asthma medication.
Okay.
And the way he did it, the specific arrangement, was apparently identical to how June used to meticulously organize his epilepsy pills years before.
Another very specific unconscious echo, perhaps.
Perhaps. And then later, at age 9, another profound statement related to his health. He said something like, "I could have died of a disease, but I wanted to die early. I didn't face my disease at that time, so I'm now facing it."
So explicitly linking his current health problems, the asthma, the allergies, to his past life choice, saying he chose suicide over facing illness before, and now he has to face illness.
That seems to be the implication, yes. Connecting present struggles to past actions and intentions.
And there was something about a promise, too.
Yes, a very touching story. When Kazuya was 10, his great-grandmother, the one June called Okasan, passed away.
Okay.
After the funeral, Kazuya absolutely insisted on carrying her cremation urn all the way home.
Why? Did he explain?
He did. He told Midori, "I have finally fulfilled the promise with her which I couldn't fulfill before."
A promise? What promise?
And it turns out June had promised his grandmother, who he adored, that when she got too old to walk, he would carry her. But of course, he died before he ever could.
So Kazuya felt he was fulfilling June's unkept promise.
That's what he stated, yeah. Carrying the urn was, in his mind, fulfilling that pledge across lifetimes.
These are some incredibly specific and emotionally charged connections. It wasn't just recognizing things, it was understanding past intentions, regrets.
And it goes even further. Kazuya also reported having memories from, well, between lives.
Life between life memories. What did he describe?
He talked about being in a place he called the reflection room. He described it as dark, a place for people who regretted their actions after they died.
And what did he do there?
He said he reflected specifically on his suicide, on the pain he'd caused. And it was there he decided he needed to be reborn, to make amends.
Thanks, how?
He actually used the word presence. He said he came back to give presence, meaning happiness, really to the people he had hurt by his death, primarily his mother, Midori.
That provides a kind of narrative arc from his perspective, doesn't it? Suicide, reflection, decision to return.
It does. He also had a very specific place memory. When he was 3, they visited a sightseeing spot, Asahina Kiridoshi in Kamakura.
Okay.
And Kazuya immediately said he recognized it. He said he'd seen it before, from the sky. Before he was born. He repeated this again when he was 5.
Seen it from the sky, like looking down before choosing where to be born.
That's one interpretation, yeah. A very concrete, unusual claim for a young child to make about a specific location.
Was he the only one with these kinds of between-life memories?
Intriguingly, no. This adds another layer. 3 other children identified in the research, just as M, H, and S, they also claim to have been with Kazuya in that between-life state.
Seriously? Other kids?
Yes. They even appeared in the documentary film. Apparently, they all said they made a promise together before birth that they would find each other and be together again on Earth.
And did they? Are they friends?
Yes. They reportedly sought each other out and have maintained a very close relationship since early childhood.
What did they remember about the between-life place?
2 of them, M and H, had fragmented memories that seemed to align with Kazuya's. They recalled something like the reflection room and had a general sense of having done something wrong in a past life.
Shared memories among multiple children. That's quite something.
It definitely broadens the scope beyond just Kazuya's individual experience. It suggests a potential shared reality, at least in their perception.
Okay, we've talked behavior, statements, memories. Was there anything physical?
There was the birthmark. Kazuya had quite a noticeable birthmark on his left arm.
Okay, many people have birthmarks. Was there a connection?
According to Dodori, yes. She said the location, size, and shape of Kazuya's birthmark corresponded exactly to a burn scar June had.
A burn scar. From what?
Apparently, when June was a teenager, he accidentally touched his arm against the hot exhaust pipe of a motorbike, left a distinct burn.
And Kazuya's birthmark matched it.
That's what Midori claims. Kazuya himself, of course, had no conscious memory of June getting burned. But the physical correspondence was there.
A physical mark potentially mirroring a past life injury. That's often cited in these kinds of cases, isn't it?
It is, yes. It's considered a particularly tangible piece of potential evidence by researchers in this field.
All right. One more area mentioned in the sources, a reunion with some people June knew.
Yes, this involves twin sisters, Mikoto and Tomomi. June had coached them in basketball back when they were in elementary school.
So they knew him quite well as kids.
They did, and they really admired him. Tomomi, in particular, was very attached. She apparently carried his picture around with her. They were understandably shocked and devastated by his suicide.
Okay, so how do they connect to Kazuya?
Years later, one of the twins, Mikoto, happened to meet Midori Kazuya's grandmother at, of all places, a welcome baby class, when Mikoto had her own child.
Small world.
Isn't it? They reconnected, and eventually, Mikoto visited Midori's farm. And there, she met young Kazuya.
And what happened?
Mikoto described looking at Kazuya, who was obviously physically completely different from June. But she said when she looked closely into his eyes, she had this sudden, overwhelming feeling of recognition.
Recognition of doom.
Yes. She said it was an incredibly powerful feeling, almost a certainty, that she was looking at June somehow in this little boy's eyes. It completely convinced her that Kazuya was June reborn.
That's more subjective, of course, than a birthmark or a specific statement.
Absolutely. It's an emotional, intuitive recognition. But coming from someone who knew June well in a different context, it adds another personal dimension to the whole story.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. We've got quite a collection of details here.
We really do. You have the timing Kazuya's crying incident lining up with the anniversary of June's death.
Right. Then the recognition factor, the drawing, June's best friend Yumi, including that specific accent.
The unusual family terms Oto-san, Oka-san, Mama, I-chan, matching June's usage exactly.
The statements Kazuya made that seem to align directly with June's experiences, his regrets, his suicide, like, I will live this time, or linking his illness to past choices.
You forget the life between life memories, the reflection room, wanting to give presents, seeing Kamakura from the sky.
And those memories being shared apparently with other children who knew him before birth. That's a big one.
Then there's the physical evidence, the birthmark corresponding to June's burn scar.
And finally, that strong emotional recognition from Mikoto, June's former student.
It's a lot of different types of evidence, all pointing, for the family at least, in the same direction.
And just to be clear, all this information, these anecdotes, these claims, they come directly from the sources we looked at. The research paper, the documentary, the interviews.
Exactly. Yeah. We're presenting this case as documented. It's certainly remarkable, provides a huge amount to think about. We're not here to draw the final conclusion for you.
No, definitely not. But the sheer number and the specificity of these interconnected details, it's quite extraordinary, isn't it? It really prompts you to consider things differently.
It does. The nature of memory, identity, consciousness itself.
Precisely. So maybe here's the final thought we can leave you with. Considering this whole accumulation of details, the timing, the memories, the verbal and behavioral echoes, the physical mark, the emotional impact, what could this suggest? What might it imply about consciousness maybe not being tied strictly to one body, one lifetime?
Could memory persist? Could identity have a continuity we don't usually consider? These are the big questions the case raises.
They really are. It gives you a lot to ponder. And if you are interested, as we mentioned, there's the documentary A Promise with God, or just looking into other documented cases of this kind. It's a fascinating area.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us into Kazuya's story.
Yes, thank you for joining us.